Hey everyone! Today on the podcast we have Evan Ritt, the founder of Tolos. Evan, can you let's start off by giving me a little bit of an education on barefoot shoes. So, just what is the purpose behind them?
What's up, Jake? Okay, yeah. So to jump into barefoot shoes, the way that I sort of describe them to basically everybody that I talk to now, because it dominates my conversations. But it's the cool cousin of toe shoes. So everybody knows about toe shoes. Everybody knows about how weird they are. And barefoot shoes have similar qualities, but they're not as weird. Even though a lot of them are weird right now. So the three qualities that are important to me and are important to most barefoot shoe people are, number one, a wide toe box. And not only wide because a lot of the big box brands will have a wide version, but an anatomical toe box. So paying extra respect to the big toe. The second thing being a zero drop sole. So 0 millimeters of drop from the heel to the toe so that you're not pitched at an angle. And that's the reason for that is just to align you naturally. And then the last one is having a thin, flexible sole. And the thinness ranges different. There's different applications that you may need more cushion or less cushion. But the most important thing with that feature is that it's flexible and it moves how your foot should move, so that your foot isn't moving like the shoe. Your shoe is responding to your foot. So yeah, those are the three main things that I talk about with barefoot shoes.
Makes sense. So you kind of like the way you described that. You pretty much described what was wrong with a lot of different shoes, or not necessarily wrong, but different. But maybe you could go into like your standard person who is walking around all day in, let's say, running shoes. What's wrong with something like that?
Yeah, and and what I think you were also sort of saying is, what ends up happening a lot with this conversation is that I don't want to be the guy who's saying, bad, you're doing all these things wrong. Here's one more health thing, because everybody is always hearing about, oh, you can't have processed sugar. Oh, the food pyramid's terrible, which are all true, but it's just not the best communication method. So I'm going to do my best to lay this out without being too finger pointy, because at the end of the day, you can wear whatever shoes you want to wear. It's your life. You can do whatever you want to do. I just want to maybe give you some information. Maybe you can change some habits, and for some parts of your life, that's kind of my philosophy. Is that for myself, I wear barefoot shoes 99% of the time. A lot of people, there's this ravenous barefoot shoe community that's very similar, barefoot shoes all the time. But I think, and especially coming from an athletic background myself, I think that there is, at least in everybody's life, there's a time for barefoot shoes or more natural footwear. It will make your life better. So now to answer your question, so the common knowledge right now, everybody is walking around in running shoes. That's sort of the like the fitness, the healthy shoes. Like if I need to go to the store and I'm gonna throw on my Nikes, I'm gonna throw on my Adidas, my New Balance, whatever. So like I was talking about with these other qualities, so almost all shoes on the market right now come to a point at the middle. And both of them are pointed. And what that's doing is it's just forcing your toes into a point. And when you start wearing shoes like that at a young age, like basically everybody does, it forms your feet. And then if you start, I come from an athletic background, like I said earlier. And so I'm thinking about it as your toes being the bottom of your stride. As you're trying to build the most power, the most efficient stride, if that bottom chain in your link is deformed and pressed into this like tiny point, then you just don't have the same power output. So that's kind of an extreme case. But how it manifests in almost everybody, 1 in 3 adults in the Western world, I don't know about other places, have bunions. And you can't find a baby with bunions. Bunions aren't genetic. And Big Shoe, as I like to make fun of them, they'll blame it on genetics, but you'll never find a baby with bunions. And all it is it's like if you're wearing a corset, like how women wear corsets and train their waists. It's doing the same thing on your toes. So to circle back again with your question, there's these shoes that have pointed toes. They have elevated heels, and so they're tipping you out of alignment. And it's not a huge change. Like you're only elevated a tiny bit, but it shortens your calf muscles. It sort of just changes all the alignment with everything. And then you're walking day in, day out. And so thousands and millions of reps, it just accumulates. And then lastly, the thin flexible sole. So everybody right now tells you that you need arch support, you need cushion, you need all of these things. And there's so many angles that I could poke holes in that. From a physics perspective, I also, I was sort of a math guy growing up. I studied math at school. From a physics perspective, an arch, which your feet has 3 arches in it, an arch it's a compressive structure. It gets stronger as you put downward force on it. That's like you drive through a tunnel and it has an arched tunnel. And that's as strong as you can get. That thing's never collapsing. If it was, say, a bridge, for example, though, if you wanted to collapse that bridge, you could never press down and break it. But if you pressed up, it totally weakens it. And that's the whole thing with arch support, is that all it's doing is weakening your arch and making you weaker, and then it's perpetuating your issues. So long story short, people are having these issues with their feet because they start wearing shoes at a young age. Doctors, podiatrists, physical therapists are telling them you need arch support, you need cushion, you need all these things. And what those things are really doing is perpetuating the issues they have. And then it's this cycle where they don't know what to do. They don't feel relief. They're constantly asking what they can do to fix it. And the medical community isn't telling them that they can just take them off and walk barefoot or walk in more natural shoes, and it will resolve everything. Yeah, don't get me started on Big Shoe. I'm coming.
Well, I was going to ask, why do you think it got to this place in the first place? You know, it's obviously been a long time that this has been the norm to wear arch shoes like that. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear why you think that.
So this gets into like the history of footwear and like the history of athletic shoes. And a lot of people in sort of like the foot health space that I'm in they kind of attribute Nike in like the 1960s with starting to do all these things where Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman are trying to craft these shoes for running, and these perfect shoes that have this extra cushion and they have elevated heels, and they start to do this whole thing. And to be honest, I think what happened was they started to have success. Mm-hmm. Other people were copycat. Oh, that's the next trend. That's what we're going to do. All of a sudden, everybody's doing that. And then a generation passes, and then that's just common knowledge. But it seems like common knowledge to us, but if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, we've never had these on our feet, and everybody has been fine our whole lives. And now we have more foot issues than ever. And there's one thing that there's another brand, Zero Shoes. It's out of Boulder, Colorado. And I've heard the founder say this before. You'll never find a podiatry clinic in a third world country. It's just a first world problem that we've basically created, in my opinion.
Got it. That's interesting. So I would say I probably didn't try my first pair of barefoot shoes. It was probably like 4 or 5 months ago, and I started wearing them like for my walks with my dog, for example, and it just felt really natural. And I just did it for a couple weeks in a row, and was starting to walk my dog again. And the first shoes I saw were like my running shoes. So I threw those on, and I noticed that I was like moving faster. It was just like easier to move, just with those like softer soles. And like I'm not saying it was better. I'm definitely not saying it was better, but I feel like how you were describing it as like Phil Knight and them, they had success right away because they're like, it's like the cloud or the cushion is propelling your foot faster. But just because you're moving faster, I'm guessing your perspective and mine is now as well is that it's not necessarily better for you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And so there's like a couple ways that I think about that too. So it's difficult to actually, so I've been wearing barefoot shoes full time for about 4 years now. I got my first pair in 2013, but I didn't really like full time go into it until the last like 4 or 5 years. But it's really, it's a difficult transition. It takes years to do it for some people. And so I have sympathy for somebody like you who, you're obviously very well educated on the fitness side, and you want to start to reprogram your body, just try to optimize your body. And so you're going for walks, wearing barefoot shoes, but you've lived a lifetime, as same with me, but now I'm just a couple years ahead of you. You've lived a whole life where you've had these shoes, and basically you just have weak feet and ankles at the moment.
Gotcha. Yep.
And so it's a difficult conversation because there's so many naysayers of it who are coming from it as they've lived their whole lives in these casts, basically. And if you think about, like, if you break your arm and you put it in a cast, everybody knows how weak it is when you take it out of the cast. And that's essentially what we're doing with our feet, but nobody's really recognizing it. And so then people are basically taking their arms out of the cast and going straight to the bench press with overdoing it on the barefoot shoes. And it's super easy to see how you can have a bad reaction to that. And so, yeah, like I could kind of hear in your in what you were saying is that there's this transition, and being somebody who is so interested in fitness like you are, I can see that it's something that you want to get better, but there's hesitation, and you need to have this transition. And so I'm also trying to give people the space that it's okay. It's okay that you don't put the barefoot shoes on and your life is immediately changed and you never go back. It's not going to be like that because you've had so much time in your shoes. So my advice to you would be just stay patient. There's some time in your life. Like I always tell people, when you're like, almost the best thing you can do to start is lifting. Like you probably definitely wear lifting shoes a lot of times, but there's also other times maybe you're deadlifting, maybe you're using a slant board that you could use the barefoot shoes and they'd be great for you.
Yeah, I will say I started lifting actually barefoot like months before, and like it felt more natural, so I liked it. So I bought some barefoot shoes. Yeah. But yeah, all of that definitely makes sense. I'm not hesitant towards it. I just was looking for an explanation, And that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I didn't mean to sort of put it on you because it's sort of like because especially being an athlete like you are, like your body is more adaptable, but I'm fielding all these responses now from people who are not athletes who are trying my shoes, and they're like, these are hurting my feet. This is this transition. And it's like, yeah, I can 100% see how that happens, but if you ease into it, it's going to make your life better, in my opinion.
Awesome. Totally makes sense. So how did you stumble across all of this and the issues with modern footwear? Big shoe.
Big shoe.
Say, yeah.
Down with big shoe, man. So I played hockey in college, and my trainer got us New Balance Minimus, and this was in like 2013. And I hadn't really put it together for a couple years, but we were all in the weight room, me and my teammates. We always talked about how much we loved the shoes, how comfortable they were, and they were just ugly.
Yeah.
And there was this trend in the industry where the biggest company in the barefoot space is Vivo Barefoot, and they came out in like 2005, and they're by far the biggest player right now.
Yeah.
And then there was sort of this boom around 2010-ish. There was a book that came out called Born to Run, and the hypothesis behind that book is that humans' competitive advantage was that we could persistence hunt, and we would hunt as packs, and we would basically just track down animals. And so our competitive advantage is that we were born to run. And it sort of goes through these examples where there's this tribe in northern Mexico called the Tarahumara who are still a running tribe. And they're still, the entire tribe is still running. They run tens of miles a day. And so the author wanted to take them and put them in the Leadville Trail 100. And it's this whole like crossover of like Western elite athletes and this like average Joe tribe who just runs. And then it brings all this association with their footwear and the footwear of the Western people. And basically they just wear like leather slabs. And so that book caused this huge boom of interest in it. Vibram 5 Fingers got popular, New Balance Minimus got popular, Zero got super popular. And then there was this lawsuit with Vibram 5 Fingers where they were claiming that there's health benefits. And so I have to be careful to not claim there's health benefits, to just sort of try to educate on where I'm at. But also the body of science has gotten much larger since then, but they had to pay millions of dollars because some people got injured, like I was sort of talking about before, where they transitioned too quickly. And then it basically scared the industry. So Nike had the Nike Free, which originally was a well-shaped shoe. The toe box was pretty natural. It was flat. It was very thin and flexible. It wasn't a barefoot thinness, but it was still pretty thin. But they completely changed. It's a huge chunky heel now. The New Balance Minimus, they moved towards like the more of like the platform lifting sole. That's just sort of the angle that they went. And the whole industry basically sort of shied away. And now it's moving back. And so I had been interested in it when I was playing hockey. And then I started to get so many injuries. I felt like I was in the summertime training as hard as I could. And was going into these seasons, like my body felt so good. And then like a month into the season, it was like I broke a string on my guitar and it was like doing, and it was like injury here, injury here, injury here. The rest of the season, I was basically in and out of the lineup because I was injured. And I started to have to think about healing myself, and was also reflecting on what am I doing that's putting so much tension on my system. And I kind of realized, I mean, I've been the last like 10 years or so, I just sort of naturally got really into like the biohacking space, the health space. And so I just started listening to a bunch of podcasts, and I was listening to a podcast in probably like 2017. And there was a guy that was talking about natural footwear, barefoot shoes, and how that they can help alleviate plantar fasciitis, shin splints for running, because it like I was talking about with the calf muscle being shortened, it kind of relieves everything back to its natural position. And I literally was laying on my bed listening to this podcast, and I remember looking down at my feet, and my toes were kind of like pointed towards each other, and my ankles just like looked weak. And I was like, dang, I've been playing hockey for 20 years now, and every day I put my foot in this super stiff boot that makes it so I have no ankle mobility, I have no ankle strength. And then I started thinking about my teammates and I the summer before were laughing because all of us had there's this thing in hockey where we all have huge butts, we have huge quads, but we have no calves and ankles, and our legs basically come down to points. And I was just like, wow, I wonder if my system is just completely unbalanced. If my feet were stronger, my calves were stronger, if I wouldn't need as strong of hips and glutes and quads, and if just that imbalance is really what's doing it for me. And so I just started to look into rebalancing myself, and I couldn't really I couldn't stop thinking about the barefoot shoes thing. It just made so much sense to me. And then I couldn't find a cool barefoot shoe, because that's one of the huge issues in the industry, is that the barefoot shoes right now are so lame. It adds a barrier to entry. So not only are you worried about, maybe I'm a little nervous about them being too thin, or just this change up in philosophy. I don't really know if I want to make this step. Not only are you dealing with that, but there's not ones that look good. And so I just sat in this market for years, gosh, I wish one of these companies, I wish Vivo, I wish Fieldgrounds, I wish Zero, I wish Lems, I wish any of these companies would make a barefoot shoe for me, a young athlete who I just want a white barefoot shoe,
right.
a cool white barefoot shoe. And so I sat in the market for years, and I just felt like it wasn't coming. And I felt like I knew the companies so well that they weren't going to move in the direction. And then I just decided, it's my time. I'm just going to go for this.
Very cool. So, what's step one when you decide you're going for it?
So step one was sit at my old software sales job once I retired for about a year, being I know I want to do this barefoot shoe thing. And then basically just having conversations all over. Hey, I really I think there's legs here. Hey, what do you think about this? And then all of a sudden I got connected with this woman who is starting a running shoe company. And she said, hey, I can connect you with I can walk you through the process. And basically to make a shoe, I'm going to way oversimplify it, but you design the shoe and you create a formal designed, it's called a tech pack. And then you find a factory, and then you deliver that tech pack to the factory, and then they start making samples. And then once the samples are to your liking, then you place an order, and you basically have to place an order for a minimum of 2,000 shoes, and then it takes 6 months. So the whole
6 months.
Yeah, so the design process took me 9 months to make the shoe. I wasn't going that fast, but I was being careful. And then the prototyping sampling process took me another 9 months to almost a year. And then at that point, I placed the order, and it took 6 months to make the shoes. So it was a 2.5 year process of making it. And yeah, the 6 month thing is interesting because always battling inventory now, where right now, so I ordered the 2,000 shoes. They got here in December. I've sold most of them. And I placed another order in November before the shoes got here. that order gets here in a couple weeks. Hopefully those last for a little bit, but my next order gets here in June. And so it's always this inventory issue, but it's really fun.
Yeah, really cool. So, I mean, you mentioned better looking. Is there anything else that separates your shoes from the rest of the market?
Yeah. So yeah, basically the way that I think about these shoes is that as an athlete, I felt like not only was there not a good looking shoe, that was sort of my secondary thing, but my main concern is performance. I wanted a great shoe that I could train in, that a team could order, and every one of those guys has those. They're training in the gym, and you know that they're high performance. So I was super focused on the fit of it, the way that the toe box is shaped so that it's not too much space, but it's the right amount of space so that looks good. The security so that you can be doing lateral jumping, lateral movements, single leg stuff. So really the performance is my number one, and it's my first go at it. And so there's things that I want to fix with the coming rounds. Like, for example, the sole. This is a problem with all shoes, but where the break is on your where your shoe breaks, because of the way that I designed the rubber, it kind of like pokes out a little bit, and so the glue separates on about 10% of the shoes, but it can just be redesigned better. But yeah, sort of to answer your question, the performance was my number one focus. The look was my second focus. The price was my third focus. And then the customer service was my fourth focus, because basically the performance of most of these shoes isn't that high. Vivo is pretty much the only one that you can like really train hard in. The look, there's almost no shoes that look good. The price, you have Vivo that's like 160 plus, and then you have everyone else that's like 80 to 140. And so I just went right in the middle there at 115. And then the customer service, it's really hard to communicate with a lot of these brands. And I felt like for years, I was like commenting on the Instagram, hey, like, is there going to be a training shoe like this? Hey, and I just felt like there was nothing. And there's people all over the place who are commenting and expressing these concerns, and these companies just weren't listening. And so my goal is to listen to the people and to try to make the shoes that people truly want. So I'm hoping that combination is what people want.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a big difference in the gym equipment space. There's this huge home gym community. They're always kind of, making their comments known, making suggestions. And there's definitely certain companies that have done it for the past few years, and there's no doubt that it's paid off versus others that haven't. So that's cool to hear. I'd be also just curious to hear, just like within that 2.5 year process, what was the most difficult thing? And what was the most difficult thing? And then maybe something that you would do differently had you known, if you had to do it again.
Yeah. Most difficult thing was definitely, barefoot shoes are kind of like starting to have a moment now. The most difficult thing was committing to it, and basically like in 2018, I'm thinking about this. In 2020, I officially started, but nobody had heard of barefoot shoes in any of the circles that I was in. In a lot of the, it's like, and so especially like in my local community, it was really hard for me to basically be committed to this thing. Yeah. So this is another hard thing that I'm trying to articulate to, especially people my age. I don't know how old you are. I just turned 30, but right now, so many people my age are they're going to get this degree, and they're going to get this job they don't really care about. They're like doing this life and stacking on these responsibilities. And I'm trying to give people a role model of somebody who is willing to take a step away and not live in this great apartment and move back home. I'm 30 years old and I moved back home. Mm-hmm. But it's allowing me to start this amazing company, and to give people an example of it working out and betting on yourself and doing these things. Because it was really hard to tell people, yeah, I'm starting a barefoot shoe company. You might have no idea what a barefoot shoe is, but it's what I'm doing. And I'm moving home and I'm quitting my job and all these things. And basically I'm going to hunker down. And so I felt like I was kind of like going into a cocoon, almost like a butterfly, like a caterpillar butterfly. And it's just at the point where it's starting to come to fruition. And I'm like starting to see the benefit of it. And so that's definitely the hardest part, was going into the cocoon, or however you'd say it. And then if I had to do it differently, I really don't know. Like, I would probably have sped up my design process a little bit. I was still sort of focused on my work. Honestly, yeah, if I could have started earlier, it seems like all the time, like every month that goes by, another barefoot shoe company pops up. And so it's just like a time in the market thing. But things are going so well for me, so it's hard for me to say, like, yeah, I would have done that much better if I started earlier. So, yeah, that was probably my worst answer.
No, that makes sense. I mean, as like someone who I didn't have to like make orders or anything, but it's tough when you're doing something for years and nobody quite understands. So I definitely can relate. But I'd be curious to hear, you kind of started tinkering with the idea as well. When did you actually like go all in?
So
and before it just like with that 2.5 year process, it feels like it would have been so easy to just stop. So
right. Yeah. So I was thinking about like I've said a million times, I was thinking about it for years, and I was like, there's room in this market for a cool barefoot shoe. And so it's like summer of 2020, heat of the pandemic. And I'm always like, and I'm not very happy at my job. And yeah, I'm just sort of like always thinking about it. What can I do on my own? I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I don't really like this corporate environment. And I actually see this other company pop up in Denver, and they're basically doing what I want to do. And it's like, hey, Kickstarter for this new barefoot shoe company. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to be talking trash on them. But I reach out, and it's like it's clearly like a couple young people who are doing it. Mm-hmm. They have like a white and a black, and it looks pretty good. And I was like, I reached out and I was like, I'm from Denver. I'm so passionate about this. I would love to come like help your team. I'm basically like banging down the doors. Like, can I like come check out the shoe? Can I help you guys? I'll do anything. Like, and so the guy's super nice to me, and he's like, yeah, come on over. Let's have a coffee. And I was so excited. I've got my Field Grounds on, which is another company. They make more casual shoes. And they had just come out. I got in on their Kickstarter in like 2018. So I like bike over there. I'm all excited. And I get there and like open the door and say hey to the guy. And he's got his like rack of shoes on the ground. And none of them are barefoot shoes. It's like Ultra Boost and dress shoes and all these things. And I was like, oh, where's all your barefoot shoes? And he's like, I don't really wear barefoot shoes. I don't like them that much. And so immediately I was just like, that is such a red flag. And then he's like showing me the shoe, and it clearly doesn't have a wide toe box, and it's like clearly not that thin. It's like has these gimmicky features. And I basically left there and was just like, this industry continuously has these companies popping up and making these mistakes. And I know what would work in this industry. And I watched them. They had this huge crowdfunding campaign. It was like, they made like $70,000. And I was like, if I can just make a better shoe than that, then this is going to work. And so right after that, I got introduced to the woman who introduced me to the designer. And actually, the one thing I would have done differently is I definitely wouldn't have worked with the designer that I did, because I designed the entire shoe. But I would have, because I paid him $10,000. He basically was like a freelancer and was like, I'll do it for $10,000. And I had no idea. I had no other place to look. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. But if I had to do it again, and when I have to design more shoes, since I'm basically the designer, I just need somebody who can use the tools and like take down my ideas and like clean up all my work. I'm probably just going to hire somebody off of Fiverr who can make it for like $20 or something.
Right.
Because it ended up being, I designed every aspect of that shoe. But so I met with that company in the summer of 2020. And then in November, I hired a designer. I moved home. I quit my job.
Okay.
I basically went all in.
Dang, you did go all in.
Yeah.
And then it's still over 2 years later before you actually produced products. Cool.
Yeah. Oh, wait, actually, I didn't quit my job for another, my timeline was messed up. I didn't quit my job until I finished the design and started working at the factory.
Got it.
But
gotcha. Cool. So I'm guessing you just lived as cheap as you possibly could, saved money, moved home.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
You gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah. And I quit my job, and so I didn't have income. I was living at home, so I wasn't paying rent. But I was doing stuff like, I've always been sort of a handyman. My dad's an actual handyman, but I can like use tools. And so I was doing like TaskRabbit, and it's going to be such an amazing story someday. And it like right now, because that was a huge ego thing for me, where I was like, I have this college degree. I was a professional athlete. I had a 6-figure job, and I quit. And now I'm driving to people's houses and hanging their IKEA furniture. I'm hanging this 24-year-old's IKEA furniture for them. And they're talking to me like I'm scum of the earth. And so I was like, this is such a great lesson in humility, and it's not going to last forever. And someday it's going to be an amazing story.
God, yeah, that is. I can imagine, because I know Denver's awesome, great place, but I know the types of kids that move out there after college, and they're not the most down to earth.
Ironically, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because most of the Colorado, whatever, people from Colorado are really just very nice people. And then, you get the people that move to Denver, and maybe not so nice.
Yeah. Believe me, I've seen my fair share of them. It's like, and I think that's just sort of like a young people in general today. It's something that I definitely battle with, where I'm just like, dang it, guys, like, wow. Get your stuff together.
Well, props to you. That's awesome. I definitely respect that. And then, just like on your Instagram profile, I think it says something like top shoe of 2025 or awarded best shoe of 2025, something along those lines. I'd be curious just to hear what's next for you.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what the next, line of shoes is. Mm-hmm. So right now the one shoe that I have is called the Archetype, and it's basically like a gym. Like I was saying, like 1A is performance, 1B is the look, and so being a hockey guy, like every hockey guy is the same. And so we all wore Lululemon and we're like walking around. And so the goal of this shoe is to be something that like I could have worn in the gym and then I could wear with my Lululemon when I'm walking around town and still feel good. So like an extremely versatile shoe. Versatility is kind of like the name of the game for me because in my opinion, like we were talking about earlier about like time in the shoe, I think that if you can accumulate more time, you'll accumulate more positive benefits from it. And so the better looking the shoe, the more that you can wear the shoe, that's going to happen. So I'm trying to think of, I have a couple ideas for the evolution of these shoes. So basically the easiest evolution that almost everybody does is they go from the low top to the high top. So like an athletic sort of high top version. That would be very cool. I definitely will have basically all types of shoes at some point. I'm considering making a more casual shoe, like a leather shoe, because basically if you're not like training or in the gym sort of wearing athletic stuff, you need something that you could wear with jeans. But the tough part is that there are some pretty good options for that already, and I'm more so thinking about what is there more of a need for, and letting that dictate it. Yeah, and what I think I'm going to do for the next shoe actually is rather than do anything too crazy, just add like 5 to 10 millimeters of like an EVA foam to what I have. So between the upper and the rubber outsole, so that you have basically like a transition shoe, or like a training wheel shoe, or just like an everyday shoe. Because when I go, like sometimes I just want a little bit more cushion. The only real option right now is to wear Ultras, and those are a running shoe. That's what I wear when I run. Wide toe box, zero drop. They have a sole, but their soles are getting increasingly bigger. And so I think there's a market for a wide toe box, zero drop, but just like a little bit of cushion. So that way, like you're going on your walk, you got something that you can throw on and not be too worried about it, but you're still getting all the benefits basically.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and then so right now I have this 1.0 version out. Basically, I had to make this shoe. I have no expertise on anything. I didn't go to anything. I'm just a dude. And so I make this shoe and send it out in the wild. And now I've gotten like all this feedback. And so what I'm trying to do is to sort of perfect this Archetype shoe so that it's like extremely reliable. Everybody knows what they're going to get. It's like perfect for the market, and then expand to as many colors as I can with that, so that there's just a million options with that. People are happy with that shoe, and then sort of start to do that with these other lines.
Makes sense.
So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
And eventually take over, make some hockey skates that are anatomically shaped, make some cleats, make some golf shoes, make some ski boots.
Yeah, I was thinking basketball shoes. Yeah,
basketball shoes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing what you do end up doing next.
Yeah, thanks for the support, man. I appreciate it. Like I feel like I'm there's a ton of support for it, but like sometimes I feel like I'm sort of on an island in a way, and so whenever I get to connect with people like you, it is cool. Like, man, who would have ever, like, you and I never would have gotten connected without this. So,
No.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I appreciate the support from your end.
Man, absolutely. You taught me a lot, and I always just like hearing stories like this. So, well, anyways, I will make sure to plug all of your links into the show description, and we'll make sure to help spread this word. Anything else before we go?
Just thank you. Nice talking to you, and hopefully we can get some at the Garage Gym Expo. Hopefully we can get something going there. If not this year, then next year.
All right, that's going to do it.